Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of Full Steam Ahead. I'm your host, Zoe, co-host Esteban, co-host Angel. Day off for tonight. They'll be ready to go after the conclusion of the 2025 World Series. But what a World Series has been for the Toronto Blue Jays. If you take away game 3 of that walk-off from Freddie Freeman, my God, 18 innings. I stayed up till the 16th inning watching that game, and I couldn't move on from the 18. I think it was like 1 o'clock Central Time here at Houston, Texas. So when game 3 in the 16th inning had happened, I had to go to work. So best believe I was going to sleep to get my Z's. But 18th inning had finished. And honestly, the Blue Jays were very close to winning that game. So just imagine the Blue Jays could have won game 3, did their business at game 4, and tonight took care of business against the Los Angeles Dodgers at Chavez Ravine for game 5 from courtesy of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., David Schneider, and a couple of other important players of that team. But episode 291, of course, is the Astros podcast. We're going to talk about the biggest storyline of this week, at least for the Houston Astros. As the title right there, Astros hit with a major coaching loss, and Bill Murphy is leaving the Houston Astros and now heading to the Berg in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to join the Pittsburgh Pirates pitching staff as their head pitching coach. So nothing but good things for him to come for that pitching staff, especially that comes with Paul Skeens, Bubba Chandler, Jared Jones. I mean, that pitching staff is going to look very nice in the future for that team. But we'll get down some details and some work of what Bill Murphy had done for this team and this franchise throughout his time here with the Astros. Of course, we have our objectives on the side. Will this hurt the pitching department? We'll talk a little bit more about that. Contract predictions, as well as Jim Bowden putting out some predictions on some signings of some key free agents hitting this winter. So we'll look through that. In particular, though, we're going to look into the starters because that's what Houston is looking into, is starting pitching coming into this offseason, into the winter meetings. So we'll break it down with that. Astros on Dylan Cease. That is a name that has been talked about for numerous years. If you're a Houston Nationals fan, you've heard this name come up at trade deadline talks, even in the baseball winter meetings as well in the off season. So Brian McTaggart had an article that came out just today, had talked about potentially the Astros could be in a big run for Dylan Cease this offseason. We'll talk more on that. And AFL Pitcher of the Week, like I had mentioned in our last episode, highlighted some key Astro prospects. Well, we missed out on one prospect, and he is doing a fabulous job over there in the AFL, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. But of course, you see on the bottom of our background, we have our TikTok, Full Steam Ahead, as well as Twitter, X, Full Steam Ahead. That's where you can find us. FSA Full Steam Ahead on Instagram, and of course on YouTube, wherever you're watching YouTube or Twitter, we are there. But Full Steam Ahead on our YouTube channel as well, with a bunch of little video shorts of content from our podcast episodes, some interviews, of course, from some coaches. But we're going to try to get something going this offseason, get some interviews coming on to the pod and do all that good stuff. And as well, if you are on the road, we got our audio from Spotify to Apple. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. So make sure you like, rate, subscribe, hit that feedback, hit them comments, whatever you would like to do so. But Wednesday, October 29, 10:43 p.m. Central Time here in Houston, Texas. And my God, it is very chilly outside. I think a lot of Houstonians are happy to see that cold front come into H-Town, to the Bayou City, as well as some rain this past weekend. My gosh, I know my grass has been dead, so it's very great to see that this rain came through for a little, not too much. And of course, we had that cold front come in. I don't know, a lot of people last night from the Houston area had a bunch of wind come through. So, yeah, and then there were some strong winds right there. Prayers for them, for the people in Jamaica. My God, Hurricane Category 5 especially. I know a lot of people in the South have dealt with some Hurricane Category 5. So just prayers out to those families and friends and loved ones out there in the Caribbean. Kevin Stern is on. This is a little different tag we got here. P6M. I'm guessing that's the PM version of Cerna. What's going on, my man? And of course, upload that trade of fantasy football. We're always there talking about that, but we're not going to be talking about this on this live episode. But yeah, let's go. Get engaged in the audience. Get some comments rolling, because we're going to start off with Bill Murphy. Like I said, this is the biggest headline in the Astros podcast department topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. And like I said, I'm not going to keep y'all here too long because it is a Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday Junior's coming up, weekend. We all want to get ready for that. But of course, we want to get you up to date of some Astro news. And we're going to start off with Bill Murphy. And this came from Chandler Rome of The Athletic. He had mentioned Astros pitching coach Bill Murphy is leaving Houston for a job with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if you have seen the Astros through the years, you know a key component and a big reason of why their success has been so up there with all these teams. It is because of their pitching. Their pitching has done a fabulous job through the golden era of Astros baseball. And one being the pitching coach of Brett Strom. A lot of people remember Stromy and his ties with Houston. Well, the 2021 World Series had ended. He had mentioned that I believe he was going to retire at first, and the next thing you know, he ended up at Arizona. So who came up during that time? Well, it was Josh Miller and Bill Murphy. They both went into a pitching coaches type of deal. Both would, go into different parts of the pitching department with the actual starters, the actual relievers. So it was nice to see the success that it continued on from 2021, losing Strom because I was a head coach that you did not want to lose, but you saw the success continued on with Miller and Murphy, and 2022 World Series was their first test, and obviously ALDS went through, ALCS went through, World Series. We can go on with how the bullpen was. That ERA was phenomenal. Got a combined no hitter in the World Series. I mean, we can go on of how much success that season was. 2023, of course, was still a good season. 2024, the list goes on. We can even date back if we really wanted to, back when Strom was the pitching coach there. But a little bit of information, if people do not know who Bill Murphy is, well, I'm gonna give you a little background history of this pitching coach. He did pitch at Rutgers. He coached at Georgetown and Brown University. He also had a volunteering job because next thing you know, he wanted to go into the coaching aspect of the game. So took some volunteering coaching, and next thing you know, he ended up at Brown University, and he was there at Brown for a good while. But next thing you know, some colleagues of his from the university, at least in the baseball category, told him, "Hey, the Astros have a job posting right now on Twitter. Why not go apply for that job and see if you can get it?" And sure enough, Murphy just said, YOLO kind of thing. Let's do it. Let's see if I could get in. He did. And he started in the Astros farm system from 2016. He was spent some time in Greenville. Next thing you know, got promoted to Tri-City in 2017. It's almost like like the players, but this was for the coaches. So like I said, Tri-City in 2017. Next thing you know, was promoted to the pitching coach in Double A Corpus Christi in 2018, and joined Miller as the minor league pitching coordinator in 2019. So that's when Miller and Murphy finally, interacted with one another, being coordinators during that time. Like I mentioned, Brent Strom had mentioned that he was going to retire after the 2021 World Series. That came off. Next thing you know, Miller and Murphy took over as co-pitching coaches after Stromy had left. And the rest is history, of course, from 2022, 23, 24, and 25. Tony, nice seeing you on the chat. Don't want to cut my grass. I'm with you on that. I think the only part of my yard is the front yard right now. So that's the only part I had to cut, because on my side of my grass right now, it just dead with the sun beaming on it. And had mentioned, dude, want to go hang out with Paul Skeens. I mean, who wouldn't want to go work with one of the more elite pitchers in the game, especially Paul Skeens? They drafted another young cat this past during this MLB draft in July. He's going to be good. Like I mentioned, Bubba Chandler, one their number one pitching prospects over there. You got Jared Jones still. If I'm not mistaken, Mitch Keller's still going to be there. They got a lot of young dudes out there that could pitch. So by all means, you're bringing a guy like him that's probably going to show a lot of success, learning from Stromy, learning from Miller, going to take that part of what he learned from his time in the university, from college baseball to, the minor leagues, to working with these two guys and now taking it to Pittsburgh. Man, That pitching staff is going to be really good. But if you're Pittsburgh and you're a Pirates fan, you got to find a way for your team to look at some offense. Because if they could get a good offense, that NL Central is going to be tough. You already got the Cubs, you already got the Brewers. If you get the Pirates with some offense, and you can't forget about the Reds. They also made the postseason this year. But like I mentioned, if you can find some offense on that team, man, that Central is going to be very, very scary. But back to Bill Murphy, and a lot of high praises from these coaches and Strom and Miller talking about Murphy. And like I said, was under bench Strom for them times when he was as the minor leagues, and as well as in 2021. I'm pretty sure he had talked to Strom as well during the spring training times. And this came from Chandler Rome's article when they had finalized that Bill Murphy was going to be the next pitching coach for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He had mentioned Strom called Murphy a, quote, combination analyst pitching coach down on the field, end quote. Strom also praised Murphy on the way he communicated and explained different processes of pitching analytics, which was edgertronic, and trackman. You see a lot of the game getting more analytical heavy, more tech savvy, and you've seen coaches kind of get accustomed to it and try to use it into their things. Of course, you got the old heads, nothing wrong with their, philosophy of their pitching coaching ways, but you need a guy that's going to be very analytical heavy, has to figure out, what pitch works in this situation, what pitch has this much velocity, this much movement. How can we get that pitch more effective on some certain counts or against some certain batters? So a praise from that. And then Miller, of course, working with him by side for numerous years, said Murphy was a, quote, super smart, genius level understanding of things we value, end quote. And like I mentioned, I mean, Josh Miller is a great pitching coach, but Murphy was a coach that was very analytical, very tech savvy, technological into the game of baseball, using these different systems, using these different analytics, how to get better at certain pitches, like I had mentioned. And that's what you saw in this Jeff Luhnow era when Luhnow took over the Houston Astros as a GM. Sigma Dale was another guy. He literally wanted, I would say he wanted a staff of analytical people, but he looked into being more advanced from other teams, looking at the analytical perspective. And that's what Murphy did. He did his own research over there at Rutgers. And whenever he was the pitching coach over there in the colleges and some of the leagues, came over here to Houston. Of course, he advanced himself up all the way to the majors. And honestly, him and Miller have done a fabulous job from their years after Strom had left. And they were co-pitching coaches, like I mentioned. Of course, more than anything, you saw Josh Miller walk up to the mound. And that's what I'm saying. I believe, this is just me personally speaking, Miller was the coach of looking at mechanics, seeing different ways of pitches. You would see him spend time in the bullpen. Of course, like I mentioned, he would go to the mound, talk to the pitchers. You would hardly see Bill Murphy into the mound. More of the time being, he was in the bullpen, of course, with Josh Miller whenever the starters were getting ready, but he would stay more in the bullpen. I know there is a video on Twitter. I think his Twitter handle is at shakeup, or that's his profile name. But there was one video, and I think it was Jordan Alvarez that hit that game 6 home run that was dead center over the batter's eye. And you saw Murphy just jump up and down. Full excitement. So that's why I think he was there for the bullpen, for the relievers, seeing what works. And of course, for starters, he was still in that bullpen looking at what things would work best in certain pitches, how the pitches look, how the pitches feel, all that type of good stuff. But crunching the numbers real quick between the Pirates and the Astros, and shockingly, I did not think the Pirates had so many good numbers. And this is from Brian McTaggart's article about, or one of the MLB.com guys. I think he writes for the Pittsburgh Pirates. But he had mentioned the Pirates had Strom as an assistant pitching coach this past season. They did not bring him back, or he did not want to come back or something like that. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, number-wise, Pirates finished as one of the best pitching NL staffs in 2025. 3.76 ERA, which I did not see that coming, was seventh best, and a 19.1 WAR. That is fourth best in the league. Just think about that. Of course, you have one pitcher being Paul Skeens. Other than that, I mean, Mitch Keller had a good season, and I'm pretty sure there's some other guys too. I'm not looking at the Pirates roster right now or anything like that, but you could see that there was success into this season for them. So think about that. You bring in a guy like him, like Murphy, I think it's just going to make them even better. And this is from Rome's article from talking about the Astros pitching staff. They in 2025, this is how they finished a 3.86 ERA, which is tied for 11th in the league, and an 18.0 WAR. That's not bad at all. 8th in the league as well. And that's a rotation slash bullpen with key injuries to some starters. Javier wasn't pitching yet until later on the season. Luis Garcia only pitched for a couple of times. Hayden Wesneski only pitched for a couple of times. Got that Tommy John. Same goes for Ronel Blanco. Brandon Walter was another guy. Colin Gordon. Ryan Gusto. AJ Blueball. You lost Josh Hader. I mean, we could go on the list of injuries from Houston Astros from the rotation to the relievers. So just think how that was for Houston, being able to put up an 18 WAR and being an 8th best in the league in that department. But talk a little bit more about the Astros pitching staff since 2021 for this team, and looking at some of the statistics. 91.6 F-WAR, which is fielding WAR, third in the league, second lowest ERA in that span from 2021 to 2025. But if we go to a year earlier, or not a year earlier, year later in 2022, 3.61 ERA. Not bad at all for this team. And what I wanted to talk about too, like I mentioned, his little resume of being in Greenville, Tri-City, Double A, and then going to the majors, obviously. He was the minor league coordinator with Josh Miller in 2019. Okay. That means looking at all the minor leaguers in AAA, AA, the whole farm system. Well, 2019, these were some pitching prospects coming up in Corpus. These are some notable names from the Astros farm to what they were able to do from their success in this golden era of Astros baseball. Brian Abreu, pitching prospect. He was up and down from double A's to the majors. Christian Javier, you saw the success. He came in 2020. And in 2020 as well, or in 2019, double A to triple A. And then 20, of course, that was a COVID season. He pitched for the Astros. A lot of people didn't know about him at that time, but next thing you know, after that, 21 came, 22 came. You saw the success of Javier, how he pitched. Anoli Paredes, a fan favorite, and I think a lot of people had known as well. He had some success in 2020. Jose Urquidy, of course, World Series hero for the whole country of Mexico. I think he has the most wins as a Mexican-born pitcher there. Shout out to that. But was promoted to AAA and then the majors during that time. And of course, a young Ronel Blanco that was still figuring it out over there. So you saw him work with some of these prospects. You've seen him work with some of the major league roster at that time too. I'm not 100% sure, but of course, because Brent Strom was still with the Astros during that time. But maybe in the minor leagues and in spring training, you probably see them, still work with some of these guys. And what I'm saying is losing Murphy, I think, is going to hurt with the analytics side of the game. And like I said, because baseball is now getting into the technology, the ABS system is going to be coming next year into the game. You're seeing a lot of technology, AI, all that type of stuff come up now in the game of baseball. So the question is, will this hurt the pitching department, like we have on our topic right there? Will this hurt the Astros pitching department? It's going to be a half yes and a half no for me. So yes, because like I had mentioned just right now, I think it's going to hurt the analytics side of the game unless there's another young cat or another um, coach that could come up and fill in that void and try to be analytical, super tech savvy, and all that type of stuff when it comes to pitch situations and all that type of stuff in the movement. Or you got Josh Miller that's going to just take over as pitching coach, not co-pitching coach, just pitching coach. So the fact for me is it's going to hurt in some way, and it's going to hurt in the analytical part of this game. Seeing the movement, seeing the velocity, seeing where your follow through, where your power's coming from, where your release point is, all that type of stuff in a pitching mindset, it's gonna hurt in that particular part because, like I said, analytics is getting now big in this game. Well, I've interviewed Spencer Rigetti, and he's taken on talking about the analytics and trying to get better at that point. So you're seeing it more often grow this game. You're seeing pitchers use more of this information into their repertoire. They're using this into their scouting reports. You see this coming on, and it's making a big big stride. So the no part for me on this is going to be because you still got Josh Miller. Josh Miller still knows this pitching staff, but he's losing that part of Murphy with the analytical standpoint. But you still got Miller that could see the mechanics, could see the pitches out of the pitcher's hands whenever they're warming up, and all that good stuff. Seeing the pitches that could be thrown in these situations, in that situation. So it's kind of a 50-50, but the yes is leaning a little bit more for me just for that part of this game because, like I said, baseball is advancing day by day, night by night, and it's changing in a big factoring way. So I'm gonna say a little bit more onto the yes side. Of course, the no side's still there because Josh Miller is still a part of this pitching staff. He's still going to be head of it. He's still going to be leading the charge. But if the Astros are going to want to look in house or maybe even look into maybe looking at somebody, or they're just going to trust Miller to have the coaching staff as a whole for the pitchers, by all means, that's what it is. But let me know in the comments too, Richard. We need to clean house completely. My gosh, I mean that's what the Astros are looking at right now. Randall's gone, head athletic trainer. Snitker, who already found a job in New York with the Mets. Centron's gone, and then the assistant general manager as well is gone. And now you're losing a vital part of your staff in Murphy. Yeah, that's already 5 coaches. Well, 3 coaches and 2 parts of the organization already gone for this team. But I think, like I said, I think Miller's going to do a fine job. He's just going to be the head pitching coach for this team, unless Houston wants him to be a co-pitching coach with somebody else, and Houston wants to go look for an analytical guy. But in my opinion, I think it's just going to be Miller as the number one guy of this pitching department. So we'll have to just see and monitor what the Astros are going to continue to do. But we do got some contract predictions. Moving on to this next topic of our objectives. According to MLB Analyst Jim Bowden, he had given up a top 50 free agents of contract predictions. And some notable names are on there, of course. Kyle Tucker's on there. Alex Bregman's on there. Framber Valdez is on there. I mean, 3 Astros right there, 2 former, one that could be possibly going into a former category with the Astros. And this is what I put for the list of starting pitchers in that article because, like I said, I think the number one priority for Houston right now is starting pitching. And this is what the top 50 free agents, according to Jim Bowden, and his contract predictions. So we're going to start off high with the number, and then we'll start off low with the number being last. Framber Valdez, he projects 6 to 190, 6 years, 190. Ranger Suarez, 6 years, 164 million. Dylan Cease, 6 years, 187 million. Zac Gallen, 5 years, 135 million. Michael King, 3 years, 75 million, as well as Shane Bieber, 3 and 75. Merril Kelly, 2 years, 30 million. Chris Bassett, 2, 45 million. Mitch Keller, 2 years, 15 million, which I think Mitch Keller is on a contract. I thought he had signed an extension. Got to double check on that one. But Jose Quintana, 1 year, 5 million. Jack Flaherty, 2 years, 22 million, as well as Brandon Woodruff, 2 years, 22 million. Like I had mentioned today, earlier, Brian McTaggart put out an article stating what to expect this winter for the Houston Astros. And a starting pitcher was on that list, on this list too, as well. It's right there. Astros on Dylan Cease. And this is a quote from that article. Expect the Astros to make a run at workhorse free agent right-hander Dylan Cease, whom they tried to trade for in July. If you're an Astros fan, you have seen the Astros target Dylan Cease multiple times. Not just once, but twice at the trade deadline. And if I'm not mistaken, too, in the wintertime as well in the offseason. So they've always, and this was even before Brown hadn't even got here. Brown got here in 23. And this year he was going after Dylan Cease from the Padres. Well, don't be surprised that Houston's going to continue on with him. And honestly, this is a prediction right here. I think he will be a Houston Astro. I don't know what the figure, if that's going to be the right figure right there. 6 years, 187 million. If I could get a calculator real quick, because I do not have my phone on me. 187 and 6 years. That's about 31.16 AAV, which is your annual salary each year. You're going to get paid. For Dylan Cease, for 6 years, 187 million. Man, that's pretty steep if the Astros are really going to do that. And for Framber Valdez, if that was that number for him, which, like I said, they're just playing with the numbers right now. They're not saying that it's going to be a definitive number and that's going to be what they want. Of course, if you're a pitcher, you're trying to give whatever you can. Framber's going to get 31.66 according to that number. Ranger Suarez, 6 years, 164. Let's see what that gives us real quick. 27.33. So, and then Michael King, 3 to 75, same as Shane Bieber. That's 25. That's simple math. 2 and 30 for Merril Kelly. That's 15 a year. Bassett's about, what would that be? 22 in that? No. Yeah, about 22 and a half. Flaherty would be like 11 a year. Brandon Woodruff would be 11 a year as well. So, if you're the Astros going into this offseason, you first, like I said, the number one priority is going to be starting pitching. First is going to be you need a workhorse. And that's what McTaggart had mentioned on his thing. You need a guy that's going to replace them innings eaten up by Framber, because Framber pitched this whole season. If anything, maybe he missed about 2, 3, possibly 4 starts. But Framber Valdez innings pitched this year was 192. He almost had the 200 mark. He hasn't hit the 200 mark since 2022. 23, he has 198. 24 and 176. And this season was 192. 13-11 record. So game started 31. So like I mentioned, you need a guy that's going to go out there and give you a bunch of innings. Of course, Astros fans knows Framber Valdez, the way he pitched 6 innings. You saw the quality start tour in 22 or 23. You had 6, 7, 8. Even this year, I think he had 2 shutouts. Even led the league, I want to say, in shutouts. So you need a guy that's going to be a workhorse. And if we go and look at Dylan Cease and what he did this season regarding pitching-wise in innings, he pitched 168. The season prior to 25 and 24, he had 189. So he's yet to hit the 200 threshold, but 168. He had an 8-12 record this season. He did pitch 32 games, and we'll say that about Dylan Cease since 21. Looking at games started, 32, 32, 33, 33, 32. So Cease has shown that he's able to stay healthy. He's still able to go in some innings that you need, anything like that. And to me, he would go really well with Hunter Brown. I think that would be a good 1-2. Of course, I think Brown would take over as the ace of this staff, like I mentioned and predicted in the beginning of last year's season in 25. I mentioned that Brown's going to be the new ace of this rotation. Sure enough, he showed why he should be that guy for the future of the Houston Astros. And you bring in a guy like Cease, man, that I think that would be a good 1-2 punch for your rotation. Of course, you'll still have Christian Javier. We've yet to get any news about Spencer Rigetti. So having them two would do well. AJ Blueball, I think, is gonna good. He's going to get a shot at this rotation, no doubt. The way he pitched in this last month of September, even the late part of August, he showed the Astros he could be put as a reliever, but of course, being in AAA, he was a starter. And to me, I think that's where the Astros should continue to put him. I think they should give him a chance. They can't just shut that down on him because he did really well, position himself to show and give him recognition to be at least to try out as a starter going into spring training next season. But back to Dylan Cease, I think it would be a good signing. For Valdez, like I mentioned, I think it's just I don't think the Astros are going to be able to pay him what he wants. Maybe they can, but I just do not see Framber Valdez in the Astros uniform coming into 2026. Ranger Suarez, that was an interesting number. 6 years, 164. That's cheaper than Dylan Cease. You think about if you're Houston, you replace a lefty in Valdez with another lefty in Suarez. And both their numbers aren't they're pretty similar in some ways. And I mean the age as well for Suarez, he's 30 years old. Framber Valdez is going as a 31-year-old in free agency, but Ranger Suarez, looking at the innings, he pitched this year 157, 150 in 24, in 125 innings in 2023. So you haven't seen that. That to me, that wouldn't be considered a workhorse. He'd be a great starting addition to the Astros rotation, but I don't think he would be a workhorse. 27 games started in 24. That was his all-star season, not to mention, and 26 games started for the Phillies this season. So just wanted to go and dig through some numbers as well, real quick with y'all. And the way I look at pitching, this is not everybody. This is just the way I would look at pitchers and statistical standpoint. You're looking at strikeout percentage. You're looking at expected ERA. You're looking at expected FIP, which is fielding independent pitching. You're looking at WAR, which wins above replacement. That's showing how much of a contributor he is to the team that he can help win. Strikeout percentage, Sierra, SIERA, which stands for Skilled Interactive Earned Run Average, as well as CSW, which is called strikes plus whiff percentage, whiff WHIFF, meaning swinging and missing percentage, and weak percentage contact. Because at least as the Sierra part, that's looking at removing the defense miscues, defensive mistakes, stuff like that, and then the ballpark environment that you're pitching in. Of course, when you look at Minute Maid Park, you're looking at different ways. It could be we're talking about Coors Field, which is a hitter's ballpark compared to a pitching friendly ballpark in T-Mobile Park. So them are some factors that come into play. But for me, going back to what I was saying for the statistical standpoint, if I'm a GM and if I'm a front office member, I'm looking, we could put our Moneyball hats on. We can be looking at these things: expected ERA, expected FIP, Sierra being skilled, interactive, earned run average. You can look at the strikeout percentage. You can look at WAR because WAR is very accountable in this game of baseball, as well as CSW, called strike plus whiff percentage, as well as weak contact. Because as a pitcher, what you're looking to do, you're looking to get weak contact, ground balls, fly outs, swing and misses, called strikes. You're looking at all of them parts that help a pitcher in their game. So I broke down, these are my targets if the Astros are going to go out there to look at. This is just me. I think the Astros could target these guys, and I'm putting Framber Valdez on that list. Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, Shane Bieber, who's pitching really well for the Blue Jays. 3-1 in the postseason. Only loss came to the Seattle Mariners, not to mention. He's been pitching lights out. So Shane Bieber, Zac Gallen, who I thought Houston could have looked into a little bit more in the trade deadline. I feel like he was overlooked from all the other pitching prospects. But anyway, Zac Gallen, Merril Kelly, Brandon Woodruff, and Ranger Suarez. So them are 7 pitching guys from that list I just gave y'all. And we can look at, let's look at Framber Valdez, since he's a former, he could be a former or he could still be a current Astro. Expected ERA, 3.75. Expected FIP, 3.34. His WAR was a 4.0, which is really well. Strikeout percentage, 23.3. It actually went down. And I was looking at this offline. It has gone down for maybe 3 years now for Framber, because it started dropping in 2023. His strikeout percentage, starting at that time, 24.8. He had having a higher strikeout average than, since 2020. But 2020, think about it, that was a short season due to COVID. So that was the career high, 2023, 24.8% of his strikeouts. Going into the next season in 24, went down 0.8%, being 24. And then last but not least, going into 2025, it dropped to 23.3%. So I feel like some teams have kind of gathered on. Framber's still a hard guy to face. That sinker and that curveball mix is still deadly. So for that saying, that has gone down. His Sierra, which is SIERA, is a 3.66. His CSW is 28.5%. And his weak contact percentage is a 4.6. Of course, with Framber Valdez, what you're going to get is a ground ball machine. One of the best pitchers at doing that. Hunter Brown did a really good job too doing that this year. But Framber Valdez, 59.4% of the time, that is like the 97th percentile on Baseball Savant. And of course, through the years, you've seen him be a ground ball machine. You've seen him come in some situations, getting out of some jams due to the ground ball, getting some double plays as well. So that was a very big part of his game when he went to the mound for the Astros. And I'm just looking just to see. The wrong thing. Bear with me. So yeah, Framber Valdez with that. Dylan Cease is another guy. Expected ERA 3.46, so better than Framber's. Expected FIP 3.56, which Framber has the advantage of on that. His WAR was a 3.4 WAR, which is still good. Strikeout percentage was better than Framber at 29.8, and it's been consistent. I think that was almost his career high, but it's always been a plateau of right there for him. His Sierra is 3.58, which is really good. CSW 29.6, which is really good, and 3.7 weak percent contact. Not bad. So Dylan Cease is, like I said, if he was to replace Framber Valdez in this rotation, I don't think the Astros would be losing anything besides the the ground balls. I think that's really about it for him. Dylan Cease has been a really good pitcher throughout his years. Got a really great pitch mix with the sweeper, the change, and the curveball. So I think Cease could be a really good player to put in a replacement role for Framber Valdez if the Astros do not decide to bring him back, as well as Framber doesn't want to sign that extension or sign a new contract with the Astros. So who are next? Who is next? Let's go with two guys that really didn't get to pitch a lot this season. One being a injury season ending surgery, and one guy that came back in the last part of the season and is really helping their team try to win their first ring since 1993. And we'll start with Shane Bieber because he's been pitching really well. 7 games this year. This is not a strong sample size for him. And I really did not want to grab numbers from, I think, 22 or 23, because I think 23 he got hurt. He didn't pitch in 24. I think he pitched in 23. Not 100% sure. Don't have it right in front of me. It's my fault on that. But small sample size, like I said, so don't make it think it's a big deal. 4.58 expected ERA, expected FIP 3.35. Not bad. It's like in Framber's territory. His WAR had a 0.3. Strikeout percentage, he had a 22.8. Excuse me, sorry about that. Sierra 3.52, which is around Cease's Sierra as well. His CSW percentage is a 29.8 next to Cease, and weak percent contact is a 0.9. So for me on this one, right now he is showcasing himself to the league that he's still capable of being that ace that he was, that Cy Young that he was in the American League when he was with the Guardians at the time. And he's doing a really good job doing that. And like I mentioned, in the projected signings that Bowden had put for him was a 3-year, $75 million deal. I think, and this is my prediction, I think that number is going to be a little bit lower just for the fact he only pitched 7 games of the 2025 regular season. Yes, he has been pitching really well in the World Series, so I think some GMs are going to try to down Bieber in that category. His strikeouts from the regular season weren't really high like Shane Bieber. The way we know Shane Bieber, and if you've followed baseball, you've seen him as a strike thrower, a strikeout thrower as well. I'm going to his page on MLB.com right now. I'm gonna pull up the strikeouts by the game logs, and yeah, like I mentioned, I mean he only pitched 4 games, 7 games including the postseason, but we'll look at 4 regular season games. Oh no, MLB's acting silly with me. It was 7 regular season games. Anyway, looking at the strikeouts, I mean, it's still a little strong. His first game back had 9 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts coming back, 6 strikeouts, 4, 5, 4, 3. So like I said, he generates a lot of weak contact. The strikeout numbers are still going to be there, but this is a guy I think you can get on a bargain deal because he's still coming back. If he wins a World Series, I'd say 70% he would test the market, because a lot of players that win a ring and are free agents the next year, either they really love where they're playing at and that environment that they want to stay in, or they go test free agency and just try to get whatever money that they can. And by all means, you got to respect the business side of it. The business side of baseball is ugly, but at the same time too, they're doing what's best for their families and for their future. So Bieber, I think, man, that could be an interesting one for Houston. Going down to Brandon Woodruff now. Woodruff looked really good when he came back from injury with the Milwaukee Brewers. And I'm going to get his stats on MLB.com real quick, but I do have some other stats like our statistical parts I've been saying today. And here we go. Expected ERA, 2.18. My gosh, that is That is a sexy number. 2.18 ERA for Brandon Woodruff. And expected FIP 3.24. Them two numbers have been strong compared to Framber, Dylan Cease, and Shane Bieber. His WAR is a 1.8, and that's been good as well. Strikeout percentage 32.3%, which is a really good. Like I said, it's a small sample size because it's only calculated for 12 games, but 32.3%, that's not bad at all from a guy that is in his 32-year as on this earth. I'm not talking about in the league, 32 years old. Sierra is a 2.90, which is a really good number. CSW 30.6, really good number, and 2.6 weak percent contact. So Brandon Woodruff is a guy I think Houston could benefit on in a contract standpoint. If they don't look like they want to break the bank and look at some small things, like some small sample size, like what they did with Nate Pearson, for example, then I don't mind them signing a guy like this. He's shown and he's proven that he's been a really elite pitcher through his years. I'm gonna go to Baseball Reference real quick and see what they got with him through the years. But right now I'm on MLB.com and I'm gonna read you some of them numbers on MLB.com. Coming back, I mean, from the month of July in his four quality starts, only giving up 5 earned runs and then 4 starts. The strikeouts are really good. 8 strikeouts, 10 strikeouts, 5 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts. Going into the month of August, 4.88 ERA. There are 3 games that he didn't get into the 5th inning, but I mean, still the strikeout number just pops out. 8 strikeouts, 4, 6, 8, 3. And then in September, he had dealt with a lat strain. That's what made him not pitch for the rest of the season. In them 2 games, my God, 6 innings, 8 strikeouts, 5 innings, 9 strikeouts. 9 strikeouts and 69 pitches in that last start. So this guy's going to throw a bunch of strikes. And if you're Houston, you're looking for a guy that can throw strikes, that can pound the zone. That's going to, like I said, that CSW, called strikes plus whiff percentage. That's going to get that whiff, that swing and miss. So Brandon Woodruff is a good buy for the Astros if they decide to not go big heavy on signing a guy. And looking at his stats, 2021 was his best season of his career. 5.3 WAR, 9-10 record. Doesn't sound sexy. 30 games started, 179 innings pitched. The FIP was a 296. ERA plus was a 161. So, yeah, I mean, he finished 5th in the Cy Young voting in that year. Had a 13-4 record in 2022 with a 3 WAR, 3.05 ERA, 2.56 ERA in 21. Not to mention, so Woodruff is gonna give you some quality innings. The only thing I will say about Brandon Woodruff is the injury history. He has dealt with injuries throughout his career. And if the Astros can, of course, last season you saw how that turned out for the injuries for Houston. I think 17 or 18 injuries. I'm thinking at the top of my head of what they had dealt with throughout that season and 25. That's the only part for Houston if they do not want to sign him is because of his injury history, because he does have a history of being injured for some time. So I'm looking at it real quick. Significant shoulder surgery in October 23, missed the entire season of 24, right lat strain in 25. So, like I said, 32 years old, had 3 major injuries. I mean, one being a shoulder injury. That shoulder surgery is like one of the worst surgeries you can get. And then having that right lat strain, your lat's back here. So for me, I think this is a good signing. It's just it has to be at the right price. 2 years, 22 million. That's honestly not bad because think about it. 2 years, 12 million. This is really out of the view mirror. 2 years, 12 million was given to Victor Caratini. That was 6 million a year. But for Brandon Woodruff, if this is what the projected contract could look like, 2 years and 22 million, that'd be 11 a year for the Astros to spend. And like I said, if Houston doesn't want to spend too much at free agency, Brandon Woodruff could be a interesting buy low candidate, as well as Shane Bieber. Them two guys could be buy lows. Of course, Houston's not going to throw all their money at starting pitching, but I will say this: if you're the Houston Astros, you are more than likely looking at 2 to 3 starting pitchers going into this offseason. Guaranteed, they have to. You got to get a number one guy that can be, like I said, like a workhorse, like McTaggart had put on his article. And you need some guys that are going to be some inning eaters. And Nate Pearson could be that guy, or he could be a dog going into this next coming season in 2026. Or for, guys like in trade situations, you got some prospects that you can trade away in the offseason. Of course, the outfield more than anything, of course, infield too, as well. Um, and we'll get into more of that later in the offseason. I want the guys to come in and talk about that. I just don't want to say it just behalf of my own self, but yeah, buy low candidate, Shane Bieber, Brandon Woodruff. Real quick, we'll look at Merril Kelly and Zac Gallen because we're already at the 51-minute mark. I said I wasn't going to be here that long. So we'll go with Gallen and Kelly like this. Gallen, expected ERA 4.39. Kelly, expected ERA was a 4.08. Expected FIP was Zac Gallen was 4.12. Expected FIP was 3.81. WAR 1.1 for Gallen, 3.1 WAR for Kelly. Strikeout percentage 21.5 for Gallen, 22.3% for Kelly. Sierra 4.24 for Gallen, 3.95 for Kelly. CSW percentage 27.6 for Gallen and 27% for Kelly. Last but not least, the weak percent category of contact 3.5 for Gallen and 3.8 for Kelly. So when you hear them numbers, Kelly was more of the one having the best numbers out there. Strikeout percentage was there. WAR was there. Expected FIP, expected ERA, Sierra, and Gallen had him with the CSW percentage and the weak percent contact. So the only thing with Mitch Keller is he's, I don't want to say old, but he is aging, 37 years old. Do you want to give a contract of 2 years and $15 million to a 37-year-old pitcher? For that answer, I will say yes. That is not a bad contract, 7.5 a year for a guy that really pitched well in Arizona for them 2 years. Went to Texas. I know the Astros saw him twice. And I remember that game in Texas at Globe Life Field. That changeup was just moving like crazy. It looked like a wiffle ball. So that pitch has been a really good pitch for him in his arsenal. And that's what had made him generate a lot of weak percent contact, a lot of caught strikes and whip percentages. So I think Kelly could be another buy low candidate, just like these guys with Brandon Woodruff, as well as Shane Bieber. So if you ignore the Dylan Cease, this is just hypothetically looking into the rotation, just being a GM, put my GM hat on. If you don't go after Dylan Cease and you want to buy low, you can go get Brandon Woodruff. You can try to get Merril Kelly. Woodruff is 32 years old. Kelly's 37 years old. You have two guys that can be a big contributor in your middle part of your rotation. The only thing is, if you're the Astros, if you get them two guys, you are looking for a guy that's going to be that number one, number two, that 1-2 punch of that rotation. Not saying that Kelly can't beat it. Not saying that Woodruff cannot be it either. But you do need to have that support for Hunter Brown. And that could be possibly coming at a trade. That could be coming at Joe Ryan. That could be coming at Sandy Alcantara. That could be coming at Edward Cabrera. That could be coming at Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray. I mean, the list goes on to some trade candidates that could be possibly in the trade mix this offseason. Hunter Green, that's like a very wish upon. You would have to like really wish at a shooting star coming down. But that's what you would have to do. If you can get Woodruff, you can get Merril Kelly. You go get a inning guy like a Alcantara that can kind of replicate with Hunter Brown or an Edward Cabrera or a Sonny Gray, then that can be a really good rotation going into your next season. can be looking like Brown. I'm just going to throw Sonny Gray. Brown, Gray, Woodruff, Merril Kelly, Christian Javier. Of course, you still got Nate Pearson as well. But with Nate Pearson, he's coming in as a starter, but of course, is that going to work out for him? You can go to a 6-man rotation. You could go to 5-man rotation. It depends on what the Astros want. They already got one starting pitcher. But like I said, mark my words. I think more than likely they're going to be targeting 2 more. 2 or 3 more. You cannot have enough starting pitching like Dana Brown says. Pitching is always going to be there. And last but not least, this was a fun one. Ranger Suarez. Really good pitcher this year. A really good left-handed southpaw. I think the Astros could benefit in their rotation because they do not have any left-handed starters if Framber Valdez leaves. And it's going to be a right-handed heavy, not right-handed heavy, but right-handed pitching heavy rotation. I think I did say that good. But Suarez, expected ERA is a 3.15, expected FIP 3.61, a WAR of 4.0, which is a 4. Strikeout percentage 20, Sierra 3.73, CSW percent 27.2, 6.1 weak percent contact. And I wanted to throw this one on there because he's not going to get a high average of ground balls. He's not going to get that heavy dose of it, but it is not a bad number. 48% to Framber Valdez, 59.4%. So it's about a 9.4% difference. If you can get Suarez, and of course, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Suarez doesn't have a lot of innings that he had pitched into, like a 170, 180, 190, 200. No, he didn't have nothing like that. But he is a guy that's going to give you ground balls. He's going to get weak contact as well as the called strikes. The strikeout percentage, it's a little low. I will say that. But like I said, it comes into perfection with the ground balls. If you get weak contact, you get him to roll over. You could get him to hit right at the positional player, whatever that third, second, first, short, wherever it's at. You get double plays like that. He's a good fielding pitcher as well, which was Framber Valdez's weakness, I will say, for him. So it's going to be really fun for the Astros. I do like to bring up these prediction and contract numbers that they put on here because, the fans, nobody knows what a good number is. We even try to project what the signings or the extension numbers could look like. And we sometimes don't even have a great clue about it. So I wanted to look at Jim Bowden's. I'm like, you know what? Let me put this on there. Let me see what we can, what pitchers look really well for Houston and which pitchers don't look too good for Houston. So starting pitchers on that category. If I was the Astros, like I said, the 7 guys I will target. And if you want to stay in the Astros category, you can stay with Framber Valdez. You'd be looking at Framber Valdez, Dylan Cease, Shane Bieber, Zac Gallen, Merril Kelly, Brandon Woodruff, and of course, you're still going to be knocking on the door of Ranger Suarez. The thing I love about talking about this is because World Baseball Classic is coming up. Omar Lopez will be the head coach, the head manager. But it's not even the head coach. I'm thinking of football and everything like that. But the manager managing Team Venezuela. Of course, there's some ties with that Venezuelan team being with Jose Altuve, Luis Garcia, which I think Garcia could be a potential non-tender contract in this year for the Astros. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting to kind of connect the dots on them type of parts. So we'll just have to see what happens on there. Appreciate the love on here, Anthony Mares. We need you as one of the coaches. I don't know about that. I mean, I don't mind it, but I think I'd go bald real quick. Just trying to tear my hair out if nothing goes really planned out. But yeah, Superior Panda 27. Anthony, do you think Houston will hire an elite pitching coach to replace Bill Murphy? I don't know who's talking about, Anthony Mares, or if that was coming towards me. But to answer that question, like I said in the beginning of the show, I think Houston's going to stay with Josh Miller as the head honcho. He's going to be the head pitching coach because Murphy and him had shared co-pitching coaches in their titles. Now, Miller will be the head pitching coach if the Astros do not want to look at other, venture off and look at other places. So we'll have to just continue looking the offseason, what the Astros continue to do. Like I said, we try to do this podcast once a week. At least some type of Astros news comes out. And next week, the guys, like I had said, Kevin, you're asking where's the other co-hosts. They should be back next week. They're going to wait after the baseball winter meetings, but I wanted to do a solo show tonight just for the fact to give everybody some of the context of who Bill Murphy was, where's he going, how's the Astros going to look, at least in the pitching standpoint of the department, how they're going to look going forward without him and having Miller as the head guy. I did not fire them. That's I don't know where rumors are saying, but no, I did not fire the guys. The guys are just taking a break. I think they were busy tonight as well, so they'll be back next week, like I mentioned. To end the show, you're funny. To end the show, AFL pitcher of the week of the last topics. We're not going to go too much into deep detail, but James Hicks. We talked about Walker Yonick. We talked about Anderson Brito. We talked about Joseph Sullivan. Well, there's another kid in town that you got to pay attention to. Not in the top 10 category of the prospect list like those guys had lists last week, but James Hicks, number 26 prospect in the Astros top 30, hasn't allowed a run in his first 3 starts. Excuse me. Sorry about that. A 139 opponent batting average, 14 strikeouts. His last start, 4 innings, scoreless frames, 2 hits, 6 strikeouts, and no walks. That is a phenomenal job by him. Just in that start, and really the starts he has had, he has become the Arizona Fall League pitcher of the week for this past week. Remember, last week was Anderson Brito. Well, another guy in the Astros farm. James Hicks, who was a 13th rounder in 2023, gets the crown of being AFL pitcher of the week. Sources say they're holding you back. I don't know about that. Maybe a trade there is holding me back on that, and that's regarding fantasy football. If nobody plays that game, Anthony, would you like to say more on this topic? Kevin, you're always a fun guy to have on the show, but yeah, that's going to be the end of the show. Like I said, I did not want to take too much of y'all's time. We just saw the Game 5 World Series. Wanted to get that out the way so everybody could see that, and then we could talk some Astros baseball real quick. But yeah, I mean, another news for Astros fans of George Springer did not get to play Game 4 or Game 5, or I think he played Game 4. That's when he had that oblique injury. No, Game 3 he had the oblique injury. Game 4 he didn't play. Game 5 he didn't play. So if you're a Blue Jays fan, and if you're an Astros fan, because I know a lot of Astros fans love George Springer, you're hoping that he can find a way to play in Game 6 of that World Series, which is going to be a fun one, honestly. Yamamoto, who's already pitched 2 complete postseason games, that's very rare. I've never seen nothing like that. And he'll be going against Kevin Gossman. And like I mentioned, if the Blue Jays could get to the bullpen, if they can get their starters out of the game and get to the bullpen, they're going to do just fine. And sure enough, they've done that. They attacked Blake Snell. They attacked Shohei Ohtani. They didn't do a bad job on Tyler Glass now. So once you get them starters out and you get to that bullpen, where I think that's been their weakness, I would say, this postseason, except that 18-inning game, they did a really good job. That's where the Blue Jays could win. And Toronto, if you're the Blue Jays, you got to keep scoring. You got to keep scoring if you are the Toronto Blue Jays, because that's how they've been winning. 6 runs today, 6 runs yesterday. I think they only had 3 runs in Game 3. Game 2, of course, you saw how that was, 11 runs. So Toronto's doing a really good job. There was a video too from Foul Territory to end of this part of the show. I'll say this at the end. Was Kevin Pillar was talking about Carlos Correa telling George Springer to pay attention to the hitting coach over there in Toronto. And George has had a really good season, at least offensively for 25. And even in the postseason, he was hitting really well. And what he's done a really good job. I'm talking about the hitting coach now. He's done a really good job just getting his philosophy through these hitters' minds and making good contact and trying to, put the ball in play kind of thing. It's just simple as that. So That's what the Blue Jays have been able to do. They're one of the teams that score the most runs average wise, and they've done a really good job. So we'll have to see. Game 6 will be on Friday, and then of course if there's a game 7, I think it's either on Saturday or it's going to be on Sunday. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun one. Like I said, the guys will be back after the World Series, so we'll have that podcast episode either on Wednesday or Thursday. We'll have to see what that will be. We'll get some type of topic of for the Astros, maybe some grades of some certain positions or things like that. So, like I said, enjoy everybody being on the chat tonight. We had a good crowd coming in on this solo show, talking about Astros pitching coach Bill Murphy and some contract predictions and some fun starting pitching statistical standpoints. Like I said, if you didn't know about them statistics, there you go. Gave you a little refresher. You can do a little bit more research if you want on your end just to get ahead of the game. Because, hey, like I said, baseball is advancing in analytics, technology. You got to stay ahead of this game some way, somehow. But till then, like I said, at the bottom of the screen, I told you where you could follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Full Steam Ahead, FSA Full Steam Ahead on Instagram, as well as the YouTube channel. Go up there, get that subscribe button. I know a lot of our audience is coming from Twitter. I appreciate y'all going on to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of our live podcasts, any of our live interviews, or anything like that. Of course, we're continuing to put some shorts, some reels, some TikTok reels, some Instagram reels, all that type of stuff of our podcast, as well as some interviews and some, just baseball in general. And if you're on the road heading out this weekend to any place, or just heading your commute to work or coming out of work, or if you want to tell your girlfriend, your wife, or, your loved ones, hey, that's the best Astros podcast you got to tune into. By all means, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Like, rate, subscribe, download, all that type of good stuff. Leave the feedback. But off season's almost here. Baseball is almost over. We're going to get you ready for this off season. We're going to break down a lot of things. We're going to prepare you. This was just a little beginning. This was just a beginner's introduction of what to come in the offseason for Full Steam Ahead. We're talking a little bit about stats, what can help this team in certain positions and stuff like that. But till then, y'all have a good start to your Thursday. Happy Friday, Junior. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week, and we'll see who is the World Series winner and who would be holding that trophy in the North. Till then, y'all stay safe, and talk to y'all soon.